and welcome back. I'm Jill Norrie, and today we are going to read The Lunch Bunch Kindie Keeners. We're going to start with Chapter 2, and it's called September, Finding Friends. Thanks for joining me. I like your backpack. My grandpa loves plaid, Ashley told the boy beside her. I got to pick it out myself, replied Andrew with a thick Scottish accent. Why did you pick a plaid one, she wondered. Ashley told her they had just arrived in Mountain Creek from Scotland. It reminds me of home. Where are you from, and what is your name? I'm Ashley, and I was born in Mountain Creek. What's your name, and where is Scotland? She fired right back. I am Andrew, and Scotland is a long way away. The smell of fall was in the air on this crisp Monday morning in September as families slowly gathered outside the main doors at Mountain Creek Elementary, all of them anxiously awaiting the starting bell for the first day of school. As they gathered in front of the school, the students' faces showed an assortment of emotional expressions, especially the youngest, who would be going to kindergarten. Andrew watched quietly. Is that kid wearing a cape? The one that is hiding behind his mum? And Andrew pointed to a nervous little guy. Oh, that's my friend Brandon. We went to preschool together. He'll be okay once we get going. I don't see anybody else I know. Do you? Andrew looked around. The only other person I know besides me mum is Matthew. He'll be exploring and could very well miss the start. I don't see him. Andrew looked at the adults' faces and he could connect the parents' emotions to the corresponding kid. Brandon's mum was teary as she soothed. You're going to be fine. You'll know many of your friends from preschool. Be brave, Brandon. Ashley's mum didn't interrupt the story that Andrew's mum was regaling her with. Instead, Andrew watched her lock eyes with Ashley and smile, and Ashley smiled back. Another parent seemed oblivious to the unending conversation from her little girl, but gave the occasional, yes, right. Did she have a British accent? Is she ever a chatterbox? Mumbled Andrew. Andrew looked at his mum and knew she didn't have a hot clue where Matthew was, but was enjoying the conversation with Ashley's mum. Despite the jitters, everyone was excited about the possibility of magnificent adventures, learning, and friendships that were to come. The students were as prepared as they could be for their first day. They were dressed in their back-to-school outfits, had outdoor shoes on their feet, and indoor shoes in their jam-packed backpacks. They carried their lunch kits loaded with snacks. All they could do now was wait. And then the morning bell rang. The teachers stepped out of the school and stood in front of the crowd. Principal Shaw waved and started speaking. We are excited to welcome back our local students and families to Mountain Creek Elementary. A big Mountain Creek welcome to our new families who have traveled from all parts of the world. Our school community is thrilled you will join us on our learning journey this year, and we are grateful for the chance to learn about and celebrate your cultures. I promise that this year is going to be wonderful. Now, it is time to start our day. One at a time, the teachers will call the students on their class lists in alphabetical order. The children will line up, wave goodbye to families, and follow their new teacher inside to their classroom. The youngest, the kindergarten class, will be called first. Ms. McAllister, would you call your class, please? As she stepped up to the microphone, the crowd was silent. The loveliest teacher smiled at the crowd and lowered the microphone at least a foot so she could talk into it. She had long curly hair and was wearing a dress with hot pink flowers. Ms. McAllister also wore matching pink shoes, lipstick, and nail polish. She began to call out the names of the class, now known as KM, K for kindergarten and M for McAllister. Pooja Anand. Everyone watched for the first student to line up. Pooja bravely left the safety of her mum's side, smiled, and waved as she walked away and took her place at the front of the line. Benjamin Brown, Tyler Grover, Francis Harrison, Frances confidently strutted to the lineup like she was accepting an Academy Award. Her mummy looked at Ms. McAllister apologetically. Jessica Isaac, Sarah Jones, Andrew McMillan. Andrew left his family and lined up where he was asked to. Matthew McMillan. No one came, so she called again. Matthew McMillan. Where is Matthew? Blurted his mum, who looked exhausted and horrified as she frantically scanned the crowd for her son. She caught sight of him sitting high on top of the Mountain Creek Elementary sign. Get down, she ordered Matthew, who wore a big smile as he hopped down, gathered his backpack, and lined up. Now they were standing next to each other, and it looked like Matthew might share a resemblance with Andrew. Were there twins in KM? Kayla Miller, Ryan Nesbitt, Alexander O'Connell, Danielle Peterson, Brandon Pike. The crowd looked at another boy whose mother was encouraging him. She was telling him that it would be a great day and he would make lots of friends, but he didn't seem convinced. Brandon was hesitant to leave his mum, and the only thing helping was the security cape he wore under his jacket. He had tears in his eyes, and so did his mum. It appeared it might be a tough day for both of them. Ashley Walker. On her way to the back of the line, she took Brandon's hand, smiled at him, and together they joined the rest of their class. Off they went. Class KM marched into the school. Ms. McAllister led the group of students through the front door and down the long hallway to the kindergarten classroom. As they walked, Ms. McAllister reassured the students by saying, I am so excited to be starting a new year with you. I didn't sleep at all last night because I wanted to meet you and get to know all of you. We'll walk past the library. It's called the treasure chest of the school. When you learn to read, you will have amazing adventures with wonderful books from the collection. Let's give Ms. Piper, our excellent librarian, hello waves on the way by. Miss McAllister, shouted Frances, the world of books is my oyster. This is my treasure chest. There are more books here than you could possibly read in a year, Frances. I'm happy you're excited about reading, replied Miss McAllister. Matthew leaned over to Andrew and whispered, what does a book have to do with an oyster? Do they even have oysters in Mountain Creek? Andrew shushed his brother. Don't start, Matthew. Ms. McAllister continued down the hall with the school tour. Wave to Mrs. O'Neill, the music teacher. You'll love music this year because you get to play instruments, sing, and dance. Lots of fun happens in this room. The Kindies obediently waved to Mrs. O'Neill. Pooja's eyes lit up. I love to sing and dance, she murmured to her neighbor quietly. Before we go to our classroom, we'll make a stop at the gymnasium, kids. This is Mr. Smith. He's the gym teacher, the lunchtime supervisor, and a favorite teacher of many kids at Mountain Creek Elementary. Hello, kiddos, shouted Mr. Smith with a huge smile on his face. I can't wait to spend time together, playing games and running around. We'll have a blast this year, I promise. That got Brandon and Andrew smiling. They love nothing more than running. Ms. McAllister encouraged the children to keep walking with a reminder that she saved the best room for last. She frequently counted the students and walked slowly so that those at the end of the line wouldn't get left behind. Understandably excited and wound up after the tour, the students were looking forward to the best of the tour when they finally arrived at the classroom marked KM on the door. Welcome to our classroom, Kindies, announced Ms. McAllister as she led the way inside and directed the kids to the back of the room, or the boot room, as she called it. The boot room was not a room at all, but instead was a row of coat hooks with a long shelf above them. Under each coat hook was a picture of a bright red apple that had a student's name on it. Ms. McAllister said when they found the hook with their name on it, they were to hang up their backpacks. Frances found her name first and loudly and proudly told the class, Kids, I have been reading since I was 2 3/4. Let me help you find your names. I'm the right person for this important job." "Thank you for your help, Frances. That is very kind of you to help your classmates settle in and find their spots," praised Miss McAllister. The Kindies began finding their voices as they were milling around looking for their names. "Once you find the hook for your backpack and have it hung up, please come to see me and I will give you a name tag so we can get to learn your names," Ms. McAllister instructed. "When you have your name tag, please join us in a circle on the carpet for our welcome song." While singing Pooja's name as the first student in the welcome song, Ms. McAllister walked over to Pooja and invited her to stand up and wave to the class. Pooja was thrilled to give her classmates a wave and smiled widely. Then it was Frances's turn. At the mention of her name, she jumped up and ran wildly around the carpet, waving and hooting. Ms. M had to sing and calm Frances at the same time. By the time they got to Andrew, most of the students were getting the hang of the song and joined in singing. Andrew stood up but decided not to wave to his new classmates. Then it was Matthew's turn. The class started singing, but soon noticed he was not on the carpet. Ms. McAllister made a quick survey of the room and noticed him sitting on the floor under his backpack, digging into his lunch kit for a snack. She smoothly brought him back to the carpet while they sang his verse of the song. While the class was singing to Brandon, they noticed he was wearing a cape. Ms. McAllister saw it too and smiled at Brandon while she kept singing. Any cape was fine by her. Brandon didn't make eye contact with his new classmates, but he did give a very quick wave. When Ashley finally had her turn, she waved and looked confidently around the carpet at her new friends. The students loved that Miss McAllister sang the welcome song to the whole class to start their day. By this time, Matthew was feeling that this was the longest day of his life. The class was asked to line up at the door to wash their hands for a snack. Finally, as Frances was digging through her backpack for a snack, she noticed a piece of paper, a piece of brown paper bag, folded over the top of her lunch kit. "What is this?" she said out loud, to nobody in particular. As she turned it over in her hand, her eyes focused on a tiny bit of fancy writing on the bottom corner at the back of the note. "Frances," it said in handwriting. Frances couldn't read it, so she ignored the writing and presumed she knew what the note would be about. "Oh, it's probably a note from Mommy and Daddy, wishing me a lovely day and reminding me that they love me to the moon and back. I already know that," she murmured to herself. Frances was surprised when she unfolded it to see a secret coded message on the note. "Did anyone else get a note from their parents? It's not quite clear enough for me to read. Can anybody read this note? Anybody?" When there was not a peep from any of her classmates, Frances shrugged and rammed the message back into her backpack to be solved when she had the time to work through it carefully. "Did anyone else bring crisps for a snack?" Frances asked the others at her table. Frances was from the United Kingdom, and she had brought a bag of crisps. "They look like potato chips to me," Frances noted Ashley. It was fun to snoop and see what everybody brought for a snack. "I brought a drinking box," chimed in Andrew. "Hey, I have a drinking box too," said Pooja. "Who has a drinking box?" asked Matthew. All of the other students held up their drinking boxes proudly. In a very quiet voice, Brandon made a suggestion. "My family cheers each other by raising their drinks together in the middle for a toast. We all say cheers, and that means we are friends and we are celebrating." "Cheers!" shouted the children. Ms. McAllister raised her coffee mug and chimed in with the class. "What a wonderful start," she said to herself. After a few minutes, Ms. McAllister said, "Please put away your lunch kits, put on your coats. It's time for recess." This was the happiest moment of the day so far for many of the students. Kindergarten was hard work. After the students got their jackets on, they lined up at the door. Miss M also put on her sassy big pink trench coat and told the children she would be outside for the entire recess. If they had questions or needed her, she would be outside on the playground and easy to spot. She took them to the recess door that led outside to the huge play area. "I can't wait to try out the slide and look at the climbing wall," said Matthew. "I'll race you there, Matthew, and you know I'll win," bragged Andrew. Matthew shot back over his shoulder. "Only the race to the slide part. You know darn well I can climb higher and faster than you any day." Class KM was let loose for the first recess of the year. At recess, Frances organized Pooja, Brandon, Ashley, and herself a talent show in the middle of the playground. "Brandon, you stand beside Ashley in a circle and sing your little heart out. Ashley, you're next in the circle." "She sure is bossy," Brandon whispered to Ashley. Ashley replied, "This could be fun, Brandon. Just go with it." Frances arranged the 4 singers in a circle and scoured the ground for sticks. "Here, use these sticks as a microphone," Frances said, and she held out a stick for Brandon. "I see another one over there," Pooja said, and ran towards the stick by the bushes. She found microphones for both herself and Ashley, and now they were ready for further direction. "Why does Frances get the biggest stick?" wondered Brandon. "Shh!" hissed Ashley. "Be a listener." Frances started singing the welcome songs into her microphone. The concert began with a very loud, domineering Frances taking the lead. They started with her name and then moved around the circle. What Frances had not counted on was the amazing singing talent of her new classmate, Pooja. Pooja not only remembered the words, but she also thought she could do some dance moves to polish the act. "Frances, I can add dance moves to this number. My whole family loves to sing and dance. Everyone knows these moves. And when we lived in India, this was the way we danced." While Pooja sang on, Frances tried to sing louder and danced in ways no one had seen before. There were snickers and pointing from the older kids on the playground, but that did not deter the dynamic singing duo. Ashley and Brandon slunk away to the swings, where it was a bit quieter. "Do you think they noticed we left the circle?" asked Brandon. "I think Frances will enjoy the concert as a duet rather than a group number," replied Ashley. They got on a swing and spent the recess watching what the other students were doing. From the corner of the playground, Leroy watched the scene unfold. He had just started grade 3 and already needed some quiet time to reflect and observe. School could be wildly noisy, and big groups of people annoyed Leroy. He recognized Frances from the library that summer. He noted that she was revealing the fine organizational skills as she arranged her friends in a talent show during the first recess of kindergarten. Even from where he was sitting, Leroy could hear the instructions she ordered and the names of her reluctant participants. Meanwhile, Andrew and Matthew went directly to the climbing wall. It was no match for Matthew, who could climb almost anything and loved the view from the top of anywhere. "Are you coming up here today, Andrew?" Matthew teased. Andrew took his time and was more cautious, but was getting better at catching up with his twin brother. All too soon the bell rang and Cam looked for their beloved teacher. They ran to line up in front of her. "I missed you, Kindies. Everybody ready to take on the rest of the morning?" She smiled, counted 14 students, and then marched the group back into the school. Brandon's brand new scrapbooks were laid out and waiting for the Kindies at their tables. The titles of the first page was "My First Day of Kindergarten." The students were instructed to draw a picture of themselves at school today. They could add the clothes they were wearing, the snacks in their lunch kits, and their favorite activity so far, or anything else that they thought was interesting. "Finally, we get to do some real schoolwork," whispered Brandon to Ashley. "We loved our scrapbooks last year at preschool, remember, Brandon?" Ashley replied. They noticed the crayons were brand new and sharp. The pair dived enthusiastically into their drawing. Try to write your name at the bottom of the page, and please ask for help if you need it, reminded Miss M. Help! Shouted Matthew. Yes, help! Echoed Frances. Already? What is going on over here, kids? Asked Ms. M, while moving quickly to their table. Matthew and I don't do drawing, Miss McAllister. It bores us, and besides, we passed that already last year in reception, sassed Frances. Miss M assumed that reception was some sort of junior kindergarten or preschool. She firmly repeated the instructions. I would like you to do your best and draw a picture of yourself. If you need help printing your name, you can look at your Apple name tag on the table. When you're finished, you can go to the block table to play until everybody has finished their work. Matthew and Frances drew simple stick men and raced to the block table. It turned out that Ashley, Brandon, and Pooja loved to draw and color, but Matthew and Frances were joined at the block table by Andrew. Andrew was not as vocal about his dread for drawing, but he too quietly joined Team Stickmen. Eventually, Miss M told the class it was time to put away their scrapbook supplies, clean up the block table, and meet her on the carpet for a story. Everyone helped out and got their last job of the day done quickly, sat on the carpet, waiting to listen to Miss M. After, Miss M sang the new song a couple of times, and the children began to pick up a few of the words by the end. After they had stopped singing, she told them, the morning flew by. It is time for lunch, Kindies. Everybody listening, please. I will divide you up into table friends that you will eat lunch with every day. The classroom door burst open, and Mr. Smith, the gym teacher, waved excitedly. Remember me from this morning? If you're ready for lunch, let's get this show on the road. Hello and welcome to KM, Mr. Smith. Kids, Mr. Smith will sit with you during lunch each day and supervise you. Ms. McAllister divided the class into 3 table groups. Group 1, Ben, Jessica, Kayla, Alexander, and Ashley. You will go to table number 1. Group 2, Tyler, Sarah, Ryan, Danielle, and Matthew. This group, please go to table number 2. And last but not least, group 3, Pooja, Frances, Andrew, and Brandon. Head over to table number 3, please. The classroom was mayhem as the children moved around to find their tables. Before she left, Andrew tapped Ms. M on the arm. Teacher, Mum says it goes way smoother if Matthew sits with me so I can keep an eye on him, he explained. Without a thought, Miss McAllister replied, Of course, Matthew. You go to table 3. With a big mischievous smile on his face, Matthew moved to his new spot. All set, Kindies? Ms. M asked as she was heading toward the door. On her way out, she saw crocodile tears running down the cheeks of Brandon at table 3. Ashley, please move to table 3 and sit beside Brandon. With that, Ms. McAllister left the classroom in the capable hands of Mr. Smith. Mr. Smith noticed that table 3 was boisterous and louder than the other 2. He moved his teacher chair over to that table and announced, Hello, Lunch Bunch. Whoa, cheers to that, Lunch Bunch, Frances ordered. The 6 members of table 3 raised their drinking boxes for a toast to their new name. Brandon, who had stopped crying by this time, smiled and proudly repeated, The Lunch Bunch. They opened their lunch kits and started to eat. Andrew and Matthew had matching plaid lunch boxes. Andrew had a big A on the front of his, and Matthew had a big M on the front of his. Frances, Ashley, and Pooja had brightly colored and patterned lunch kits, and Brandon had a superhero on his. When they settled into eating, they started to talk to each other. Frances told the table, I already know how to read, and my mummy told me I was the smartest kid in the class. Oh, and also I read chapter books. Not to be outdone by Frances, Ashley told the table, My family says that I'm going to be the Prime Minister of Canada. Mr. Smith loved to listen to the Kindies and was quite entertained by this new group. Brandon told the group, I love the feeling of my cape flying behind me, and it also makes me move quicker from one place to the other. Mum sewed buttons on the shoulders of all my shirts so I can wear a cape every day. Ashley whispered to Brandon, I feel safer at school with you and your superhero cape. Mr. Smith noticed that Andrew and Matthew were not sharing in the discussion, and he was interested in what they were thinking on their first day at a new school. He did a double take when he looked at their faces. They looked exactly alike. Matthew and Andrew, asked Mr. Smith, are you twins? They were not wearing matching outfits. Aye, we're twins, but I am the oldest, Andrew replied. He always felt the need to tell people that. Mr. Smith detected an accent. Matthew, where are you from? Me family is from Glasgow, Scotland, and we moved here because Dad works at CDSL, replied Matthew. Andrew continued, Mum and Dad said Matthew is a handful and needs lots of reminders to make good choices. Andrew went on to tell him how much he loved to run and was very fast. He could run faster than Matthew, and that came in handy at times. Matthew reminded Andrew, don't be an Egypt. Andrew, you know I can climb higher and faster than you any old day. Mr. Smith was smiling and kind of laughing quietly to himself. Ashley wondered and asked Frances, what's an Egypt? And although she was the girl who seemed to be all-knowing, Frances dug deep, but she didn't know what it meant. As Frances was putting her lunch kit away, she remembered the note and pulled it out. At first glance, it was going to be tricky to solve, but she invited the lunch bunch to have a look, and maybe they would solve it together. Pooja, have you seen a message like this before? I haven't seen one so tricky to solve. Pooja had a look, but it didn't seem to look like anything she had seen before. Frances was sure her parents were behind the note, and there would be something delish as a prize when she solved it. Frances showed Andrew the scrap of paper with the secret message on it. As he took a quick look, he commented, I don't even know how to begin to solve a message like this. Frances, are you sure it's a message? The ratty scrap of paper proved much more difficult to solve than Frances originally thought. If it was a message from her parent, surely the word love, L-O-V-E, would be the last word. Ashley and Brandon wrote down the code to take it home and have a closer look. Between them, they would solve the puzzle. Lunch bunch, it's time to put your lunches away and line up to go out for recess, Mr. Smith announced. Ashley felt that most of the day was spent lining up. Mr. Smith looked at her and instructed, Ashley, lead the lunch bunch out to the playground for recess. When the lunch recess bell rang, Miss McAllister stood in front of the recess doors, greeted the Kindies, and led the group back inside to their classroom. The second part of the day played out similarly to the morning. There was seat work, story time, and singing. Before they knew it, parents, grandparents, friends, and older siblings were there to pick them up. What a sight for sore eyes. Ashley ran to where she saw her grandpa and grandma and gave them a big hug. How was your first day, Ashley? Grandpa asked. I loved it, Grandpa, replied Ashley. The students were over the moon to see their people and were chattering up a storm and telling them all about their day. Andrew, Matthew, over here, lads. How did it go today? Their mum wondered. Andrew smiled and said, Great. Matthew provided a few more words. Long, long day, Mum. Andrew, tag, you're it. And the brothers' shenanigans began. That's the end of chapter 2. Thank you for joining me.